people with big successful businesses in the creator economy, they don't tell you how their business works. I was desperate to see people with other businesses like mine and to understand how exactly they worked on the inside, but no one would ever talk about it. Whoever has the audience can do whatever they want. The real cheat code for us as business owners is brand. The world doesn't need another online business guru.
It's a beast of a Google Doc.
But the Google Doc itself did a very important thing, which was
Today on the show, we have Olly Richards. Now, Olly started off as a broke jazz musician until the age of about 28. He then got a real job, but realized quickly this wasn't for him either. So he started teaching people how to essentially learn a new language through his blog as a side hustle. That eventually turned into a very successful blog and business called Story Learning, which has done over $10 million in sales. And now he's pivoted into a personal brand of sorts, which is kind of where we want to take most of this discussion. But Olly, welcome to the show. We're excited to have you here and talk through all of this.
Thank you. It's always fun to chat, so I can't wait.
Amazing. So we actually covered your Google Doc a few times in the Growth in Reverse newsletter. This was something that kind of went viral in the creator space. And I don't know, do you want to give a background of like how that started for you, like where that idea came from?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, as you said, I started story learning over 12 years ago now. And when I was 10 years in, so about 2.5 years ago from when we're recording this, I just kind of started to feel that it's time for the next chapter. And I wanted to do something a bit different. And when I asked myself, where is my career capital, as Cal Newport would call it, where do I have real value in who I am and what I've done? And more, it was just becoming apparent to me that it was my experience with online business, that really valuable to people, because I just kept getting first friends and then other random people just coming and asking for advice on things. So I thought, well, okay, I'm going to move into this space, and the world doesn't need another online business guru. So what am I going to do differently? How do I avoid becoming like literally everyone else? And I thought to myself, well, what have I actually done? What have I got? Well, what have I got that other people don't? And the answer was the business. It was story learning. I have this multi-million-dollar business that I only work a few days a month in. And that is, for most people, like a really good thing to aim for. Most people will be quite happy to have that as a goal, as an aim. So I thought, well, why don't I just go full disclosure and just write about how the whole business works? Because I remember when I was just getting started, I was desperate to see other people with other businesses like mine and to understand how exactly they worked on the inside, but no one would ever talk about it. You always had the gurus who were, teaching various launch formulas and things, but I wanted to see how other people's businesses work. So, I just went kind of full on sharing mode and just wrote 118 pages on exactly how my business worked. And I think it was that kind of that depth and scale and kind of openness, which people seem to really, really appreciate. And that's what kind of contributed to it getting shared around in lots of different places.
Yeah, it's a beast of a Google Doc. Let me tell you, this thing is like full on document. So when we first covered it, this was back in September of 2024, it had gotten you about 12,500 subscribers, made around 175K at that point. And then more recently with this 30 days of growth challenge, we kind of shared that. And now you said you made 1.2 million from this Google Doc and about 18,000 subscribers. Can you break down like how that works on the back end? Like, how do you go from free 150 or so page Google Doc to $1.2 million?
I mean, the Google Doc itself is just marketing, right? So the reason it's a Google Doc rather than a PDF or a webinar is simply because the kind of people that I'm aiming at, which are established business owners, they've seen it all before. They know when they're being marketed to. They just want the information. They don't want the gloss and the packaging. So I thought, well, let's just write it in a plain Google Doc, words on the page. You live or die based on the words on the page, essentially. So that was just my particular angle, but I could have done it equally with a YouTube channel or a blog or a podcast or handing out flyers door to door. There's many different ways to grow an audience. And I got the traffic. I mean, I wrote the Google Doc and a lot of my list growth came from the virality of the doc. That's true. But it was fueled by buying ads. So I bought ads in lots of other people's newsletters. I ran some Facebook ads. I started the YouTube channel. So the traffic came from lots of different places. But the Google Doc itself did a very important thing, which was establish me as someone who knows what they're talking about. And that was the goal of the Google Doc. And then so I quite quickly after I published it got people reaching out to me asking for, and I think the reason that this happened so organically was because I didn't advertise this at all. It was just people emailing me. And I think the reason it happened was because it's just very difficult to find people in this particular space. I don't consider myself a creator. I'm not a creator, but the creator economy is a kind of it's a useful example, I think, which is that, people with big successful businesses in the creator economy, they don't tell you how their business works. Like, they might tell you about one product they've got, but they don't show you actually how does the email marketing work? How does the product ecosystem work? Like, they don't go into that level of detail, typically because their audience is not business people. And so their audience doesn't want them to start talking about business. So I think because I got my positioning on point and I managed to attract the right audience, people naturally started reaching out to me for coaching. And at first I didn't even want to do it because I'd never really done it before. But more and more, it kind of got to the point where there were so many people that wanted help. And I was writing my newsletter after all to help people. So it seemed like a logical step. So I started off by taking a few people as mentees. I mean, I call it more mentorship than coaching, because, coaching is typically, you don't have to be the master to be the coach. Like whoever coaches Serena Williams wouldn't beat her at a tennis match, right? But they're a good coach. Whereas a mentor is someone who has actually done it before, been down that path, and can actually say to you directly, look, here's what I think you should do. If I were you, I would do A, B, C, very, very directly based on experience. The first kind of 100K or so came from people just reaching out and me eventually saying yes. Once that became established, I started to raise my prices on that a little bit. I made it clear in my emails and on my website that I offered that mentorship. And so I started to get more people applying. And, over the course of the last 2 years, there have been people ranging from relatively, modest sized businesses through to, some of the biggest creators out there who I've worked with in various different ways. So the largest revenue stream has come from that mentorship. But then I also started to introduce more leverage things. So I wanted ways that people who couldn't afford the mentorship could work with me. So I ran a mastermind event in a castle in the UK, which was super fun. We had cocktails by the fire, and it was like a legitimate castle surrounded by a golf course. It was quite interesting. That was a one-off event. So then I thought, well, I want to do more of this because this is fun. So then I started an annual mastermind. It's just 8 people. It's quite small. But you sign up for the year. It was a bit more expensive. So that added a new revenue stream as well. And then I started making some digital workshops and courses to kind of standardize the various different ways I was helping people. And that provided the revenue source as well. So I'd say overall, it's probably about 60% mentorship, 20% things, and another 20% digital products.
That's interesting. So you kind of hinted at you didn't want to start with coaching or do coaching when you wrote this Google Doc. I'm curious, like what did you envision it looking like?
Yeah, I mean, so to be clear, I did eventually want to take the business into that area and to work to help entrepreneurs in some way. I just didn't expect it to happen so quickly.
Got it.
So, when I grew Story Learning, it took us until we were at the 7-figure mark. It was like, good 5-6 years. I really like building audience slowly and building audience well. Good things take time. And I wasn't in a rush because I have my other businesses, so I didn't need a new revenue stream. I kind of went into it with the attitude of, well, I'll just I'll build the audience, because my strongest belief in the internet world is that audience is supreme in terms of value. Whoever has the audience can do whatever they want. So an investment of money and time in building that audience, I knew without a doubt that if I did nothing with it for 3 to 5 years, I'd have a 7-figure business sort of ready and waiting the time that I chose to monetize it. And so that for me was a great investment. It just happened a lot quicker than I thought. So when people first started asking to work with me, I think there was a bit of imposter syndrome as well, to be honest, because I was like, yeah, okay, well, I haven't done this before. I haven't charged people for help before. It feels a bit weird. I'm not sure. Maybe it's just easier to wait. So there's a bit of that as well. But yeah, I just didn't expect it to happen so quickly.
That makes sense.
As it is now, the Google Doc is still kind of doing its thing. It's on your landing page for your ollyrichards.co website, but you're also writing a newsletter that kind of leads into. So can you talk to us a little bit about, because our audience is primarily people who write and operate newsletters, just talk to us about maybe your philosophy or just how you've come up with the newsletter, the content. This is kind of a loaded question, but I guess your general, the way you operate your newsletter and what you mean to get, or your main goal out of writing it, and maybe just like how frequently you send it, some of that information, so we can kind of get a feel on your newsletter philosophy.
It's very interesting, actually. I had a conversation about exactly this earlier on today with a friend who is starting a new business and writes a kind of editorial newsletter. It's kind of a bunch of links, his latest podcast, quote, that kind of thing that you see a lot of newsletters doing, that kind of thing. And that can be fantastic. When we were talking about what, his positioning and what he was trying to achieve, he said very clearly, like, I want to be the rebel in my space. I want to be the person who's like tearing up the rule book, positioning myself against all the big players with with a hot take on everything and a unique point of view. And so I asked him, like, the person who wants to be seen like that, do they write out? Do they send an editorial newsletter with links and quotes and their latest podcast episode? Is that what they send? Does that person send that? And he said, no. That person sends like just stream of consciousness, whatever's on my mind. I'm going to write a quick email and fire it off, because that's what I've been thinking about today. And I want you guys to know this. And it might be incoherent, but this is just coming from my desk, and this is me. And I agree with him completely, and said, yeah, I think that's exactly what you should do, because that is in alignment with your positioning and the persona that you are. Well, the persona that you genuinely are, but also the persona that you want to get across online. And I very much take that approach with my newsletter. So I see it as, email, much like audience is king in terms of the value of the business, email is king in terms of communication. I mean, there's nothing like it. And I've always taken the approach of trying to be that trusted friend in the inbox. And what does your friend do? They don't send an email saying, hey, I hope you're doing well today. Here are 3 things I wanted to tell. Like, no, it's like a one-liner or something. That's what a friend would write. And I want people to, the relationship I want to have, I'm trying to create a 2-way relationship with my audience, whereby they feel that I'm responding to them. And if they email me back, like, that has some kind of influence. There's a conversation. They're getting raw thoughts from me that are not wrapped in marketing speak or pimped up for consumption. I try to really adopt that, and I can send short emails with like 2 sentences in, or like massive long essays. It really is just kind of whatever I see, whatever comes out of whatever trends I see, whatever I feel like talking about. But I try to keep it very, very casual, very, very raw.
And are you sending it this raw, casual email as a friend? Are you sending that weekly, or are you going to set cadence daily? How often are you publishing?
I mean, I aim for 3 to 5 a week. I would send daily if I mean, ideally I would be sending daily, at least Monday to Friday. And I do from time to time if I'm I wrote a series recently called How a 7-Figure Business Dies, and it was like a 6 or 7 parts. It's actually a lot more interesting than it sounds. It sounds really depressing, but it was actually quite interesting.
No, it's definitely interesting.
But I send that every day because it's like it ends on a cliffhanger, right? And I want people to come back like a Netflix show. People binge 3 Netflix shows a day every day. Why won't they read an email? As long as it's interesting. But I go for like 3 to 5 a week.
That's super interesting. So have you always done 3 to 5 a week with this personal brand list, email list?
No, actually not. So for the first 6 to 12 months, actually, maybe even 12 months, I actually sent 1 a week. And I took the approach of having 1 really long, like, essay almost on one particular topic, and it could be like 2,000-3,000 words, and I would write it, and I would spend hours and hours editing, and I wanted it to be perfect. I think that was mostly, I think I was almost a bit overly impacted by the gravity of my case study, actually, because it was such a big document. I thought, well, I want everything I send to be equally, impressive and grand. But I had to sort of check myself after 6-12 months or so, and I just reminded myself that there is a strong, undeniable correlation in any online business between the number of emails you send and the amount of money you make. That is across the board. And for so many businesses who have an email list and have something to sell, if the only thing you do is send more emails, I guarantee you 100% you'll make more money immediately. And I just kind of had a reality check with that. And what am I doing? I'm spending like 5-10 hours writing these massive essays. But actually what matters with email and with online relationships is frequency and consistency. So I think I'm going to be much better off just going completely the other way, making it very casual, very stream of consciousness, very, very raw, but sending more of it. And yeah, it was, I mean, almost immediately since I started doing that, I started to get a lot more applications to work with me, a lot more product sales. So yeah, I had a big shift about a year in.
Without potentially going way too deep into this, I'm curious how you think about those 3 to 3-ish emails a week, because I see you're doing some cross promotions. You have some callbacks to blog posts from the past or case studies. I'm curious, like, how you think about the cadence and like the variety of the emails you're sending.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are some things which are kind of fixed. So for example, I do like list swaps with people, and there are times when you want to promote other people's stuff. Like so, for example, when I was in your 30 Days of Growth special newsletter, or
Yeah, like a
what
pop-up
do you call it?
newsletter.
Pop-up newsletter. That's it. Yeah. When I was in that, because you were kind enough to feature me, dedicated one email to sending people to that, and so that's like a swap, I guess. And so I often do like a swap maybe once a month with people who have similar lists, and that's just a great way to grow your list in general. So there's that. If I put out a YouTube video, I might send an email out to let people know about that. If I'm doing a webinar, obviously I'll send emails out about that. So there are certain emails that support events that are happening in the business. But other than that, generally, what I'm doing is I have a Kanban board of topics. And in the first, so a Kanban board, for anyone who doesn't know, is like Trello. So you have different columns, and then you have cards, and you move them from one from one column to the next when they're at different stage. So I have my first column is like 250 ideas for emails, and I have a app on my watch which I love called Epiphany that my friend Troy made, and basically I touch it, I speak the idea into the watch, and that sends it automatically through to my Trello board. And so I just had like this ballooning board of ideas. And then in the morning, I have writing time every morning. So I get up about 6, I walk downstairs, make a strong coffee, sit down, and then I have a writing process. It's like 30 to 60 minutes or so in the morning. And what I do there is I spend about 7 to 10 minutes splurging. I pick an idea that I want to write about, and I just write really quickly for about 7 to 10 minutes just to get it out on paper. Then I'll move that across to the next column, and I'll do the same thing for the next idea. So I might get like 3, 4, 5 emails out in really rough draft format. And this is based on the principle that the quantity is the quality. So when great artists make studio albums, they don't just set out to write 8 amazing songs. They write 20 songs, 30 songs, and then they pick their favorite 8. And that's what ends up in the final album. Similarly, I might write drafts of 10, 20 emails, and 4 or 5 will actually make it through to a later stage where I think, yes, there's something here. This is quality. I think this is interesting. Let's actually flesh this out into a proper email. And I do it in like 7-minute rounds. And I optimize for kind of coming back to the email multiple times. That's always better than trying to sit down and write one email head to toe in one sitting, because you're just better when you're fresh. I kind of just work through ideas that way, and build, get ideas out, and then the good ones make it out, and but they're always just, they come from my head, things that I'm interested in. If I'm running a mastermind event, for example, and a certain topic comes up, an event the other day, for example, most common theme was entrepreneurs who were sort of stuck in the operations of their business. Even though if they had a team of like 5 or 6 people, they couldn't get themselves out enough to be able to get some space and work on strategy and work on the business. So that's going to become a series of emails at some point, because I've noticed it's an issue and I want to write about it. So yeah, that was a very in-depth
No, I like it. I like
explanation.
it. I've never heard someone explain their process like that. That's interesting. And I feel like there's something to the series of emails that you're kind of alluding to. You talked about how does a 7-figure business die, and then this potentially operations one. I think that's interesting, and it gives yourself enough space to like think about one topic in that series and then move on to the next day. Like you don't have to fully flesh out this huge piece. You can just kind of piecemeal it together, if you will.
Yeah, although I actually find that these are best written in advance, because I learned email from the great Andre Chaperon, and he teaches a kind of similar approach whereby you have a series of emails. So it could be like 5, 10 emails in a series, and they all work to one purpose, which would be to align your frame of mind with a certain product or a certain outcome of some kind. And you serialize these emails, and you have cliffhangers, and it would lead from one to the next. Anyway, he's a huge advocate. What he taught me was, he was a huge advocate for writing all of these emails out and actually having all the emails on screen, like in long, thin columns. If you imagine kind of tiling emails across your screen horizontally, and then so you can see them side by side, because the great writing happens in the editing, right? As Stephen King says. So if you can write a fantastic email number 1, but what happens if you tell too much of the story? And then by the time you get to email 2 or 3, you're like, oh, that said too much, but I can't go back and edit it now because I've already sent the damn thing. So it's much better to kind of write the whole thing and then edit it. And that gets a far better result in my experience.
And so when you're when you're planning those emails with that frame of mind that you'd mentioned that kind of Andre had taught you, is that how you kind of weave in offers and services? Or I'm just curious how your newsletter and how you kind of intertwine your stories and your personal anecdotes and things you want to get off your chest with like, oh, by the way, I can help you build your business or to coach you on your online business. Okay.
Yeah, no, I don't. I keep that all separate.
Okay.
I mean, almost all of my email is just content, and then I'll have links in the footer. Apply to work with me, or like check out my YouTube channel, or whatever. I do very little direct pitching of. Well, I don't pitch my mentorship stuff at all. I do if I'm releasing a digital product or a workshop, I will write a promotional sequence for that.
Yeah.
Just like any product launch. My general approach to that is always, hey, step number 1, write a really good, interesting email that's useful. Step number 2, add a link at the end of it. But like, I very rarely send an email that's just like, hey, I've got this thing to sell. Here's how it works. Go and buy it. I'm always sending value-based stuff. But then at Story Learning, we do things very differently, right? Because that's a B2C brand. For B2C stuff, typically you need to sell more and explain to people why their thing is right for you. Why your thing is right for them. But again, just to go back to what I was saying earlier about positioning and the need to maintain that positioning very carefully in my business brand. Like if I sell too much, that's not the role I want to have in the consciousness of my audience. I want to be seen as the authority, as the person who's giving and who's helping, and so I'm quite protective of that.
So what would you say the job of your newsletter is? The number one job?
To build relationships and to position myself as the authority, and to the point where a lot of, for example, I've had quite a lot of people who have applied to work with me or join my mastermind who have said, look, I've already made so much money from just implementing an idea from your case study. Now it's almost like a given that I want to take the next step. In this particular space with this particular thing that I'm trying to do, I find it's best to position yourself in that authoritative way and just let everything else happen naturally downstream of that.
Right.
This is not necessarily a good strategy for other businesses. I just want to be clear. But the kind of guru space is so swamped with that. It's super important to be different, to be totally different to everyone else.
I think there's a lot of value in that, standing out.
Yeah, this is something that Ben Settle. I always remember this from his teaching, which is that the easiest way to get noticed, provide value, is to do the opposite of what everyone else is doing. Mm-hmm. Because the online world is so copycat-ish that you get on someone's newsletter, it's the same as everyone else's. You get on Instagram, someone's Instagram, it's the same as every other Instagram. Everyone's just models everyone else. Yeah. Even the big YouTubers. Like if you line up their thumbnails, they've all got identical videos, identical thumbnails. They're all just modeling each other. It's so depressing. And it's all just done in servitude to the algorithm. Again, like my thinking on that is, how do we exit the equation altogether and do something completely different? It's as long as you've got the fundamentals there in terms of the quality of what you write about, it's hard to go wrong.
Yeah, I think there's a tough balance between creating the content you want to create and creating what's going to potentially go viral or whatnot. If you're playing the YouTube or LinkedIn game, it's a struggle, like, to find that balance. So yeah, I mean, you could even look at any of the courses that YouTubers all teach you. It's like, use these tools to see what's actually working and model that and do that thing. And it's like, it's so frustrating. It's like, how do we get out of this?
Yeah.
This
well,
circle?
I mean, the easiest way to get out of that is to know your numbers. So if you're a YouTuber, for example, bet my house on the fact that your videos with the most views are not the videos that get you the most leads, and are certainly not the videos that get you the most customers, because the videos that go viral are very, very top of funnel, broad appeal, and they'll get hundreds of thousands, millions of views, but no one will opt into your lead magnet and no one will buy from you, because you're getting in lots of random people. But people don't know their numbers, and so they see these big metrics that the social media companies want to get you hooked on, so that you keep coming back and creating more and making them more money. People get hooked on these kind of headline numbers. But if you learn to track properly, then you can track exactly how many email leads you get from which specific videos and which of those lead to sales. And the higher ticket you go with your offerings, the more important that is. And it's often the case that the videos with the lowest views actually make you like 10 times the most money, because chances are on those videos with low views, you actually went in depth on something and you did something that you care about a little bit more. So you attracted the right people, even though there weren't so many.
Totally. I've been seeing Ed Lawrence as a guy on YouTube. He's been making some videos about, he used to run Film Booth and then he left that to do something different. And his his channel, like his videos get less views now, but he's like, I'm making 6 times
So much
the amount
money.
of money. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a
But
paradox.
I mean, all the beginners just see the huge numbers and they're like, I follow that guy because that's what I want. And they don't think about the back end. So I love that you're taking a different approach.
Yeah, it's that same thing of like, you don't see what goes on behind other people's businesses, right? That's kind of why the case study that I wrote was why I took the approach I did, because if we could all see inside each other's businesses, we'd do things very, very differently.
So you wrote that long Google Doc, and then you also put out a workshop essentially called the 7-Figure Marketing Stack, which details like how all of these pieces work together, and you're essentially building like a flywheel of sorts. And you were kind enough to give that to Growth and Reverse Pro members, so I really appreciate it.
Of course.
I was laughing because you called it a workshop, but it was like 13 hours of content. I was like, this is a course, Olly.
Yeah. I probably should have called it a course. Yeah.
But it was fascinating just to watch through. You talk about so many different things and like meta content versus teaching content, and just like I thought that was a fascinating concept. Kind of takes us away from what I was just mentioning. But if you want to explain that, go for it.
Oh, the meta versus teaching thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually just put out a YouTube video on exactly this. So if we wind the clock back 12 years or so, I just started my language blog and I released my first product. It was 2014, something like that. And it was called, so my business was all about teaching people languages. And I released this product that was called Language Learning Foundations, how I learn languages. So here's what I do every day. So here's how I choose textbooks. Here's how I set up my flashcards. Here's how I memorize words, find people to practice speaking with. It's all the meta stuff. What it wasn't was like a Spanish textbook. If you walk into Barnes & Noble, go to the Spanish section, you'll find Spanish in 90 days and it's got all the words and all the grammar. There was none of this in my course. It was just how to. And a friend of mine pointed out, sometime later, Olly, the problem is that people like you and me, we are systems thinkers, which means we actually look beneath the surface and we ask, how are things done? How do you build a business? Like what's the theory? Well, how does it actually work? We think in terms of systems. Most people though are not systems thinkers. It's maybe like maximum 10-20% of the population are systems thinkers. Most people, hey, can you just teach me the thing? And so I started to think, actually, yeah. So I'm there building my business around this course on like how to learn a language. But what people really want, if I'm being honest about what the wider market really wants, what they're thinking is the conversation, the great Joe Sugarman angle, what's the conversation that's going on in their mind? The conversation that's going on in their mind is, I think I want to learn Spanish. Who's got a Spanish course for me? So what I needed to do was to give them the Spanish course. Like it's really simple, like Spanish day 1, do this, learn this word, listen to this thing step by step. And so from that point on, I built out all of the how-to courses. And so in each language now we have like between 4 to 6 levels that progress from beginner to advanced. And it's that. So what I used to teach was the meta stuff. What I now teach is the instructional stuff. A lot of teachers make this mistake. A lot of educators make this mistake because as an educator, you're typically, your topic inside out, and that it's not enough to just pick up a how-to, coding for dummies or whatever in the bookstore. No, you need to understand a lot more than that. You need to really study your field. If you want to learn this well, there are all these concepts you've got to know. Like it's not enough just to paint by numbers. And so us as educators, we fall into this trap of teaching all of these nuances and theories because we know that this is the real key if you want to become great at it. In reality, all that most people want is teach me step by step what to do. Just tell me what to do. And so one of the biggest kind of unlocks for a lot of people is if you're listening to this and you know that you teach this meta stuff, this systems thinking stuff, then it could be a huge unlock for your business to ask, what would it look like if I actually taught the thing? And that can completely transform your business. If you are not a natural teacher, maybe you're not a trained expert and you have a bit of imposter syndrome over doing it yourself, go and partner with someone, find an expert and offer to pay them to create the product. Lots of people do it in that way, but you will find that you unlock like 80% more market for the thing that you're selling because you're actually giving people what they want.
That's so interesting. There's a lot to that. I'm curious, are you thinking about these things and like teaching and even just content in your newsletter differently with AI? Like I know it's definitely going to change certain things, sure, we had a bunch of courses before, and now we can just go to ChatGPT and ask it a question and probably get 90% of the answer. So I'm curious how you think about that moving forward.
I think anyone who tells you that they know for sure is, I'm very skeptical of people who have supreme confidence around AI and where it's going and how to use it, because it's just changing every day. So I think, I don't know, I'm thinking of it in a case by case basis mostly. And it does change from vertical to vertical. So in the language learning space, for example, it's been turned on its head, because whereas previously, if you wanted to practice French, you had to go and pay someone on a tutor marketplace to speak with you in French for an hour. It cost you like $30 or something. Now you can fire up an AI language app and practice speaking French to very, very high quality for free, $30 a month or something like that. So it's completely changed and is in the process of completely transforming the industry. But for the most part, and especially in anything that's not kind of text-based processing, anything that's text-based processing has been or is getting upended. But for the most part, all that AI can really do is just speed things up and make things more efficient. But you still need that quality control at either end. And when I have one of my most popular courses is an AI writing course, which is like how to. I mean, everyone's selling these things now, but released this some time ago after banging my head against a brick wall for 12 months with Claude to try and get it to write like me. I cracked it in the end. But one of the principles that I realized was really important for most AI stuff is a 10-80-10 principle that I borrowed from Dan Martell's time management book. It's the idea that the first 10% is input that you have to give. You have to engineer the prompt, you have to provide the material, you have to give it direction. 80% of the task is then done by the AI, but then you still need to come back for that final 10%, add the nuance to make it your own, to check for errors, to do all of these things. So, I from what I'm seeing is that for the most part, especially in online business, it's that thing that everyone's been saying for years now. Like, you're not going to lose your job to AI, you're going to lose your job to a smart person with AI. That's pretty much what I see. What do you guys think? Have you seen anything different?
I agree with you. I think if anything, it's just going to change how courses are delivered, maybe not completely get rid of them. I still think there's importance of learning how a specific person does something and how they think about it. Like, I don't know, just two different people will have two completely different teaching styles and ways of going about things. So I think AI can't just like generically give you an answer on that. I just think it's going to enhance learning and make it more like back and forth, if you will, like almost more like a conversation than a static course. But I don't know.
It gives a lot more optionality for sure. The ability to actually, if you have if you've been asked to come up with an answer to something, well, you don't just have to guess if it's right or not. You can interrogate the topic with AI, right? Go back and forth on it, ask questions. But yeah, I mean, specifically for the course thing, I do think that what that means for us as business owners is like the kind of, to state the obvious, you've got to evolve. You have to learn how to implement AI in what you do, for sure, both in your products but also in marketing. But I think the real cheat code for us as business owners is brand, because in a world where the value of information has gone to zero, you can find information on French verbs from your friend in Paris, from ChatGPT, or from your textbook on your shelf. Like, information is openly available to everybody. In that world, who do you go to when you want to learn something? And the answer is the person that you know, like, and trust. And so that's where brand comes in. And that's partly why I decided to, from story learning to this personal brand, because I felt that whatever's going on, the personal brand is always going to be, because people will follow you for being you.
So I guess going back to your personal brand, how are you? I mean, initially you had paid ads running, you were doing sponsorships and other newsletters. Are those things still all happening, or have you changed your growth, or even are you even focusing on it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I still run a lot of ads. Spend tens of thousands a year on ads. I've done a lot of newsletter advertising. I'm just actually this week launching a book funnel. So I'm taking my case study and turning it into a free plus shipping book funnel. We're launching in the UK to begin with, but then it will probably come across the pond at some point. So, because since the case study was so popular, I thought, well, that makes sense to lead with as a marketing campaign. So we've turned it into a paperback book, and that's going to go out, through regular Facebook advertising. Yeah, but I mean, the stuff I've been doing on the paid side has been working really well. So I've been mostly recently kind of behind the scenes focused on product. I've built an audience of about 20,000 people I just don't have much to sell. That's the problem. So, you know, a lot of this happens a lot with creative type businesses actually, where people can build massive audiences through their newsletter or through, you know, YouTube or whatever, but they just don't have enough of a product ecosystem to actually fully monetize that. So I'm in that phase now. I've managed to build a fairly good audience. The challenge for me is kind of how do I want to turn this into a business? I mean, do I want to? There's a lot to be done. A lot of people who I think I can help. So I'm kind of that's the opportunity for me right now, is how do I do this in the best way?
I'm with you. Yeah. audience came fairly quickly.
You've done an amazing job with audience. I mean, the reach of your newsletter is incredible.
Thank you. Yeah. So I'm just trying to figure that out, like have the community now, and then trying to figure out what the other ecosystem looks like. So I'm excited to continue going through your course, but yeah.
I have a quick question. Something that you mentioned that I haven't forgotten since you spoke to us in the pro community, and that was about what you called, I think, a self-liquidating flywheel with your 7-figure marketing stack.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that kind of is like this light bulb that was always probably there. I just realized it wasn't. It was on the whole time, but I just finally looked at it. It just like kind of blew my mind a little bit. So could you maybe talk about a little bit how you're funding? I think you're using kind of I won't give it all away, but you're using some of the funds from the 7-figure marketing stack to help fund your paid growth.
Yeah, so that particular marketing course, that was the first course I made. I've got over 10 now. I've got like 10 or 12 workshops and courses on different things, from like, you know, financial mindset, business models, online business models, through to all, you know, all kinds of different things. So this is a fairly standard model in the coaching industry. And the way it works is you go out and you buy ads, and you mostly run lead gen ads. You could have a cheap product, but you know, lead gen ads are fairly common. Now, obviously, you've then paid for those leads, right? You might be paying $2, $5, $10. So the question is, well, how do I ad cost? I can't don't want to just lose that money, make that money back so I can go and then buy more ads and increase my audience even more. So the kind of the really simple model to say, well, okay, I'm going out and I'm advertising, I'm offering a lead magnet, I'm getting leads to come in, and then I could just sell my coaching, and that way I'll make the money back. And if you're selling high ticket stuff, that's super easy to do with paid ads. Right? You might spend $5 on a lead, $250 on a customer, but then you make $5,000 back on the back end. For example, just plucking numbers out of thin air. But the problem with that is that you are now to continue to spend on advertising. Your personal time is now being used. All right, so you pay to get leads in. You're selling coaching to those leads. So the growth of the business is dependent on your time. So you could 10x your ad spend. Even if you're really profitable, you could 10x your ad spend, get 10x more leads in. But can you 10x the time that you're available for coaching? Probably not. And so the approach instead is to say, well, let's use digital products to recoup that ad spend. So you go and you spend $5 on a lead. That lead comes in. You then offer a $50 workshop or a $100 workshop. And what you're aiming for is to get to a point where the digital products that you sell cover all of your ad costs. So now you're able to pay for all of your ads, you're at break even or even making a bit of a profit. The advantage of that is now you've got a lot more leads coming in. You can raise the prices of your coaching because you have more demand. And everything that you do in your coaching is now profit. And you don't have to spend any of that to cover the ad. And so that's the model that I use in my business brand, which is I use digital products to cover all of the ad spend. So all of the 20,000 odd leads I've got in have been paid for through digital products and workshops and things like that. Which means that the $1 million odd that I made through the mentorship and the masterminds and all that, I just get to keep it.
That is cool.
But it's a big deal, because you see a lot of online business models where the people are running 20-30% net margins. And I think that's a big problem for an online business because us as entrepreneurs, we tend to be quite undisciplined with spend. And, you hire new people and you spend money on this fancy software. And before you know it, you make the number of people I know who make $1 million top line, but only keep, 300,000 of that. And then after they've paid a salary, after they paid their mortgage and salaries for themselves and their partner, they've maybe got like 50 grand left at the end of the year. Like that's not a lot to show for $1 million in revenue. So, but it's all the fault of the business model. Because if you design your business model properly, then you should be able to keep large amounts of what you make. And for me personally, an online business should be an online education business, like the kind of thing that we do, really should be aiming to make 40 to 50% margins at the least 30% margins are fine if you're kind of really reinvesting heavily in growth, because that will pay off later, further down the line. But the natural sort of resting place for margins for online businesses really should be 40-50%.
That's so interesting. I'm curious. So you're spending a lot on paid ads. How are you thinking about like cleaning the list? Like, are most of those people sticking around a while? Are you often cleaning your list from those, or?
So I don't actually clean my list at all.
Okay.
I think the whole list cleaning thing is a bit overblown, because I think what you got to remember is, so it is definitely the case that if nobody opens your emails and nobody clicks your emails, then your domain reputation is going to go down. But you got to remember that in the wider industry, you're up against like the kind of Hilton Honors or like Southwest Water or whatever are sort of sending you emails about just update on our GDPR policy, and those emails that you get from these big travel companies, and you just straight in the bin, right?
Yeah.
And these guys are sending millions of emails a month, and they're all completely useless. So those guys need to clean their list. But people like us who have audiences who are really engaged, if you're getting 40-50% open rates, which is kind of a fuzzy metric, but it's a good indicator. I'll tell you something for sure: the Hilton Honors are not getting 50% open rates on their GDPR.
50% bin rates.
Yeah.
And the kind of the big internet marketers who are, I remember Russell Brunson telling me they have a 5% open rate on their email. He just spends millions on ads, blasts the hell out of them with email, which it's a strategy. It's completely valid. It works well for him, but he's 5% open rates on his email. People like that need to clean their list. But people doing what we do, it's not an issue. As long as if you ever want to check how healthy your email list is, go and open a blank Gmail account with a brand new address, add yourself to your autoresponder or to your email software, that new email address, and then send yourself an email, see what folder it lands in. If it lands in spam or promotions or social, something needs fixing. But if it lands in primary, you're good. You don't need to worry about cleaning your list. People will naturally unsubscribe, and you'd be amazed how often you send out a promotion and someone who hasn't opened an email for 2 years will see that cool subject line you wrote, open and buy. It happens all the time. So that's how I think about it.
So interesting.
Wow.
Yeah. I guess from my perspective, like I have a bunch of people coming from recommendations and that kind of thing. So I clean those pretty heavily. But I think other than that, it's just like every once in a while. So I guess it also depends on where they come from.
I think because in my case, there's a high barrier to opting into the list, right? They have to see an ad, they have to click on the ad, they have to enter their email, and so they have to take a lot of proactive steps. The issue with co-registration, so like the ConvertKit network, Sparkloop, things like that, is just like people are signing up to your list. They don't even know who you are. They don't even want to. They just click the button on a whim. And it's quite dangerous, actually, because you can end up with a lot of people on your list. Again, we talked about headline numbers earlier. We can fall in love with our list growth and all of that. But if you look at the stats that I've seen, and it does vary from space to space, for sure, but stats that I've seen suggest that the value of an email subscriber from co-registration can be up to 20 times less that of an organic subscriber in terms of actually how much money they spend.
Yeah.
So if an average buyer who finds you organically spends $100, someone from co-reg will spend $5. So I think there's a much better argument for scrubbing those people from your list.
I was when you said you don't clean your list, I was like, but now that makes sense. If someone's using like recommendations and that kind of thing, I highly recommend cleaning at least that segment of your list.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, but again, it's all context specific, right? So I mean, my whole model is low volume, very, very high touch, high intent.
Yeah.
That's what you have to be with a high ticket model. At Story Learning, we do clean our list a couple of times a year because we have a lot more people.
Yeah.
For your Olly Richards personal brand, what does your team look like for that? Is it just you?
I have an EA, and I make use of service providers. So I have a guy who's doing my social media at the moment, just managing the scheduling and posting. It's a freelancer, and I'm using an agency to help me build my book funnel. But yeah, it's just me.
So I know we're coming up on time. I'm curious. I have one kind of larger question. So do you have anything that you see a lot of creators doing, or online course creators, that kind of thing? See what you see them doing that you think is a mistake or something that they could turn into a bigger opportunity?
Ooh, a lot of things, a lot of things, to be honest with you.
That's a loaded question.
How should I answer this? There's so many different ways to answer this. Think that there's been a real decline basic knowledge of like internet marketing best practice. So a lot of people that I see figure out a way to make money somehow. For example, growing an Instagram account and then selling cohorts to teach something specific, but they don't use email. They've never taken a copywriting course in their life. Their landing pages are atrocious. They only send emails when they want to promote a course, and even then it's like one email and that's it. There's no testing of landing pages. There are no email automations. They have like one, and then if someone buys that product, there's nothing else for the customers to go on to next. And all of these things kind of fall under the umbrella of like just basic direct response internet marketing. And back in the day when I first got started, you had to know this stuff because you couldn't, like, the traffic wasn't being like freely dished out on YouTube and Instagram like it is today, right? So you had to go and pay for your leads. You had to hustle to get them. And so you wanted to make sure that when you got an email, when you got someone on your landing page, you wanted to make sure they're opting in at 50% or 60%. And if they were opting at 30%, that's a problem. Let's test the headline. Let's see if we can get that rate up. And then, we want to create recurring revenue. So let's make sure that we have strong email funnels, which are well written at that sell to new leads on autopilot. We know through as direct response people that however much money you make on the front end with what you offer, there's as much to be made on the back end. If you have customers, try to get more customers. What you should do instead is figure out what the next thing is for your existing customers to go and do, because then you can just sell to them and you don't even have to get any more customers because they're already there. That can double your business overnight. And so, it's really hard to pick one thing, because I just, like, in general, I just come across this real lack of understanding of kind of basic just business theory. And in a way it makes sense, because, the creator economy has sprung up as something for everybody that everyone can do. And that's what's great about it. We've kind of democratized reach, and we reward creativity. It's a wonderful thing, but it does mean that we have this entire generation of people working online who don't know the fundamentals. So, I would say, in a general sense, like, go and study copywriting, take copywriting courses, go and learn digital marketing, do these things. And what you will, for me, copywriting is like the mother skill. To be a copywriter, to be a good copywriter, means understanding all elements of the business. You have to understand the customer journey. You have to understand the avatar. You have to understand pricing and offer. You have to understand front end, back end. You have to understand average order value, upsells, all of these things. Gone completely around the houses. I'm going to answer your question by saying, learn copywriting.
Mm-hmm. I love that answer. It's such a good one. And I see this because when I started in the online space in like 2013, 2014, like there were so many webinars happening and all of this stuff. And people in the creator space don't even do that for the most part. It's like it's a lost skill, even just in the sense of like webinars and like promoting your stuff in that way. So,
about a year ago, I saw a very well-known internet personality shut down his business. And he was very vocal about this on Twitter, so it's hardly there's no need to mention who it is. But what he said was something along the lines of, we've been running our kind of cohort-based business now for 3 or 4 years. It was super successful, but we just can't make it work anymore. And so we're shutting it. I've taken the decision to shut it down. I'm not happy. I'm not enjoying it. I don't know if he did actually walk away, but he said he was going to. And I took one look at that, and I thought, look, the reality of this is you were in the right place, right time during COVID, when your social media following exploded overnight and you were able to launch a cohort and monetize that and make a bunch of money. Good on you. Like, if you can do that, fantastic. But that's just a house of cards with no foundation whatsoever. This person spent too much money to build they spent too much money on hiring. They built their team way too fast, way beyond what the business itself could actually afford. And so what happened to so many people in the aftermath was that they realized that they were just burdened with this huge salary cost, all this software tools. They're spending a bunch of money on lifestyle or whatever. And as soon as the kind of COVID bubble dipped and people stopped spending so much time and money on online courses, they suddenly realized that they were making 2 million in a year and spending 2 million. And they were desperately trying to get back to where they were, but they couldn't, because they didn't have any of the fundamentals in place. They didn't know how to find customers. They didn't know how to spend money on paid advertising. They didn't have a funnel that worked to cold traffic. All of these things. And so this was a business that kind of was like died for no reason other than it wasn't run by people who understood online business and how to do these things properly. It is a big deal. And now, as AI is just pulling the rug out of from underneath the feet of so many online course businesses in particular. Like those businesses that have the fundamentals are going to be able to adapt because they understand what's going on. To want people who don't know their numbers, don't understand how their businesses are working from a structural perspective, are gonna struggle to adapt because accurately diagnose what's going on.
So good. Mic drop.
I hope not.
It's so true though. This is great. This has been amazing. Definitely went in ways I was not expecting, and I'm grateful for that.
Good.
So
that's what I tried to do with my newsletter as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, thank you for coming on the podcast. And if somebody wants to join your newsletter or follow you or do anything else like that, where should they head to?
Sure. Well, thanks for the invitation. It's been super fun. You can go to ollyrichards.co, not .com, .co, and everything's there. My case study is there. It's all free. You can also find me on YouTube, but you'll have to find my business channel because whenever you search my name, that's what you'll find. But the business channel's there, and ollyrichards.co is where you can find all this stuff anyway.
Amazing. And we'll have all of that linked below as well. So you can go find it there. But thank you so much for coming on the show, Olly. This was great.
Pleasure. Thanks, Olly. Anytime.
Thank you.